Hi there. This talk is what I believe the future of the MySQL community is. It's not actually always easy to predict the future. To really predict the future correctly, you kind of need to be an oracle. Obviously, thank you. Obviously, we're all interested in the future of the MySQL product line, and Edward Scriven's keynote yesterday assured us that Oracle would at least continue developing the product line. But we're also interested in how the MySQL community fits into this picture. I believe there's actually space within this Oracle community and this Oracle logo over here to support the MySQL community while letting us stay as free as we are today. Something that looks a little bit like this. Now, to predict the future, every good Oracle needs a crystal ball. Well, these are the MySQL Community Advocate of the Year awards I won, so I actually have 2 crystal balls to look into to divine the future. But how do I know about the Oracle community? Well, I work for the Pythian group, as Colin said, which does remote database management and consulting, not just for MySQL, but for Oracle too. Just like I participate in the MySQL community, my coworkers on the Oracle side of the company have spent years as part of the Oracle community. So I talked with them and I got the scoop on, a good sense of what resources Oracle has to offer to its community. Now, any community, whether it's a group of friends, a neighborhood, or perhaps a bunch of geeks like us, needs 2 things. These 2 things that we need to make a good, productive community are spirit and resources. We must be willing to work together to make MySQL a better product. If we all say, well, let's just all go work on some of the forks, or let's all go to Postgres or whatever, then we're not going to have much of a MySQL community because we're not working on MySQL. We'll still be a community, but for other things. So we need that spirit to work together, and I can guess that actually we will, continue to band together and work on MySQL or forks. And I believe that we'll actually have more resources available to us, like time and money. That's the second thing. We need time, we need money, we need the resources to do this kind of thing. Sometimes we need both time and money. So I can guess, again, we're going to be working together. I can also compare the resources that we have right now to the resources that Oracle offers right now. And I can take into account previous acquisitions and what Oracle has done with those, and what's already happened in this acquisition. So it would be logical to believe that the resources that Oracle offers to its community will also be extended to us. We've actually already had some of these resources extended to us. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's briefly go over the current resources that we as the MySQL community have, and then we can compare Oracle's offerings. Our main portal is the MySQL Developer Zone at http://dev.mysql.com. It usually looks like this. I think there's like a Ferrari or a Porsche on it right now. But this is what it usually looks like. To get the MySQL server, right, to download it, to get connectors like Connector J for Java and the native PHP driver and tools like MySQL Workbench and Proxy, we go to the download section. It's not necessary to actually log in to download MySQL, but if you do, the accounts are free, and it helps MySQL get metrics not just on how many downloads there are, but how many unique users there are. There are also links to official articles and press releases, and a link to the blog aggregate that we all post to and read frequently, Planet MySQL. Then there's the MySQL librarian. Do a lot of people know about who knows about the MySQL librarian? All right. It's actually a pretty cool resource to help us search for and organize and mark as our favorites the best articles, blog posts, presentations, books, pictures, and videos that we can find. So what we use the developer for most, though, is the documentation, right? We all, when the developer zone went down for a while a couple months ago, we were like, oh, God, I can't get to the documentation. It's awful. I can't be a DBA. I don't have the documentation. So other resources that help us are the forums that we ask questions on, and we get answers from MySQL employees and our fellow community members alike, and MySQL's open bug tracking system, where anyone can see all the details of current and historical bugs. MySQL Labs offers binaries for testing purposes only. There's also the MySQL Forge at http://forge.mysql.com, and here's what it looks like. The work log shows the new features being worked on for upcoming versions. Look at that. They're already working on server 7.1 and 7.0. I don't know what happened to 6. The Forge hosts code from the community under Tools and Code, and there are links to externally hosted tools under Projects. There are software previews here. These are actually different from any release, including alpha and pre-alpha releases. These previews are really just used to test one certain feature at a time, like scriptable replication and the OpenOffice connector. And I didn't make those up. Those are actually, you can download and test those right now. Well, you can't right now because the Conference Wireless probably wouldn't take downloading. And of course, there's the wiki, which includes community-edited documents and on all sorts of topics, soft topics such as how to contribute, to really, complicated internal things like explanations of how MySQL internals work. So to edit the wiki pages or to upload code to the Tools and Code site, you do need a free login. And let's just recap quickly a summary of everything that the MySQL community already has. So we have this list. So now let's look what www.oracle.com looks like. This is perhaps our new home. Who knows? Oracle's analog to the MySQL Developer Zone is the Oracle Technology Network, which has a menu item on the right-hand side under the search box. When you mouse over that menu item, you get a fly-in that has some quick links. We'll go over these links in just a moment, but if you click on that Oracle Technology Network link, you actually get to the homepage of the Oracle Technology Network, which, by the way, everyone calls OTN for short. So this is what it looks like, the Oracle Technology homepage. It has menus on the top and at the left. The middle itself has official articles and how-tos. On the right-hand side are links to popular downloads, upcoming events, and the community blog aggregate. The OTN menu has the same fly-in that we saw before and has downloads in a prominent position. Unlike MySQL, Oracle does require a login for downloads, even for the free software that Oracle offers. But like the MySQL community, the Oracle community depends heavily on the official free online documentation. There's a link at the bottom on the left side to the community blog aggregate feed. It's huge. It has a lot of stuff in it. Just above that is the community wiki. Oracle also has forums. It has official articles and tutorials, and has code, podcasts, videos, the Oracle magazine, and books. So let's compare. So far, there's not much that's new or really different. The MySQL community doesn't have official podcasts. It doesn't have official videos, and it doesn't have an official magazine, but we do have community-made media, which the MySQL librarian helps us keep track of. And there is no real, as far as I can tell, equivalent of the MySQL librarian in the OTN. There's also no tool hosting, as far as I can tell. So go back here. But most folks in the MySQL community haven't really used the MySQL Forge to host their tools for a while now. Mostly we host our tools in Google Code or on Launchpad.net or some other service that's programmed directly to use that kind of thing anyway. So now let's take a look at a resource that's completely new to us. It's called the Oracle Mix. There's a link all the way down here in the corner, the bottom left. It's actually a networking tool. It's used kind of like LinkedIn to connect and chat with other DBAs. But there's actually a unique feature of Oracle Mix. It's called Ideas, and in that area, people can suggest ideas for the community to vote on. Now that sounds like, okay, whatever, we can just vote on things. But it would actually make it easier for folks who make software to get feedback. There's a lot of polls sometimes, answer in the comments what you think. This would make it tons easier to actually structure that. Whether it's people making free and open source software like MatKit or SecureRich or OpenArc, or commercial ventures like TokuDB and Schooner High Performance Appliance, right? They can just make an idea, and people can go ahead and vote on it. Oracle's Open World Conference actually has an entire track set aside for sessions voted on by community members in the Oracle Mix. So in fact, I actually spoke at Oracle Open World in 2008 on different ways to contribute to the community, and the only reason I got there, it wasn't because I submitted to Oracle and they accepted it. It's because I put it in this Oracle Mix and people voted on it, and so I got to go as a speaker. I got all the privileges of a speaker. But I didn't officially get to be a speaker. It was because I was part of the Oracle, the Mix. So on the left-hand side of the page, the list of links actually continues. I can only show so much on the screen. One link that you don't see is the link to the user groups. Like MySQL, Oracle has lots of community-organized independent user groups. MySQL has a web page with a list of user groups. but it's really basic compared to Oracle's user group portal, which you can see here. It says, welcome to Oracle User Group Center. All the pages kind of look the same, when you're flipping back and forth. It's kind of like, oh, is this the same? Is this the same? They look very, very similar. The branding is really, really done well. But like MySQL, Oracle's user groups are independent. They might have corporate sponsors that provide meeting space and food. It's really actually very easy to find an appropriate Oracle user group that's right for you. MySQL user groups tend to be grassroots. Oracle user groups tend to be larger just because there's more people in the Oracle community. But they're also better organized for the most part. They're actually organized enough that they put on their own large conferences. There's a Collaborate conference next week in Las Vegas. It's huge, and it's run by a few user groups got together and run this conference. It's nothing like OpenSQL Camp with 100 people. It's thousands of people. So like MySQL, Oracle has a regional user group. It has regional user groups. They also have cute names, such as Northern California's NoCoog. That'd be the NoCoog. The UK's UCoog, and Australia's AusCoog. Oracle also has product-based user groups, though. So we have regional ones in MySQL. We don't really have like a MySQL cluster user group, though. But they have things like the Oracle Application User Group and OHUG. And really, who doesn't like hugs? Oracle actually makes finding these user groups a lot easier. As someone who organizes a user group myself, I actually look really, really forward to seeing what kind of organizational help that Oracle has to offer and being able to actually make a choice of whether or not I want to take that support. Now, one of the Oracle resources that I'm most excited about is their Community Honors Program. And not just because I actually received a Community Honors Program, but because of a lot of the things about it, which I'm about to go into. So last week you may have heard that I was picked as one of the new Oracle ACE directors for MySQL. Oracle awards the title Oracle ACE to community members who have done good service, which is just very similar to the MySQL Community Awards. But they have another level that goes beyond that. It's called the Oracle ACE Director, which goes far beyond just recognition of service. It actually gives honorees extra benefits and responsibilities. Now, that makes it sound like, here's your list of benefits and here's your list of responsibilities. In reality, though, many of these program items are actually both benefits and responsibilities. So direct from the frequently asked questions page, here's the expectations. You have to commit to at least 1 year of service. In the first 3 months, you have to meet with the product team. Okay, so I get to spend an hour on a web conference, big deal, right? Well, let's think about this for a sec. This is actually really, really powerful. Oracle ACE directors are expected to give feedback on the direction and implementation of software. Okay, this is a responsibility. To me, this is a benefit. I get to talk directly to the product team and say, hey, you know what I'd really love to see in MySQL Workbench? I'd really love to see being able to organize all of the machines in any way I want, not just in alphabetical order or in the order I add them in. You know what I'd really love to see in MySQL? I'd really love to see this or that. MySQL doesn't really have an official way to do this. Brian actually mentioned earlier today the Customer Advisory Board. There isn't really a Community Advisory Board, though. There is informal stuff. I chat online with some people, with even some of the product directors, but it's not really an officially mandated kind of thing. You just have work log and bug reports. That's the way that we as the community can give that feedback. So often, the problem is the best way to give feedback about things like product direction and how you want a feature to work isn't via a text field within the blog, within the bug post, right? Usually it's through chat or voice where you can explain what you mean. You say, okay, here's what I really want to see. I want to see kind of a hierarchy, and what I mean by that is, a little tree and things like that. It's very hard to get across in text sometimes when you're trying to explain things. Again, there's really just no official infrastructure in MySQL to have that kind of conversation. And I presume that within Oracle, this means that community feedback is actually a significant influence in corporate Oracle product development. So I hope that will, come forward with MySQL as well. The next expectation is actually to introduce yourself on the Oracle ACE Director Forum. Okay, big deal. I have to, register for forum and introduce myself. That's not a big deal, but it's a private forum, which means that Oracle ACE directors have a place to talk to each other about important issues that they might not want to engage the entire community in. You also have to subscribe to the appropriate Oracle developer newsletter. Not a big deal. And it's actually preferred that you start or maintain a blog. I suspect anyone who becomes an Oracle ACE director for MySQL probably doesn't have an issue with this. They probably already have a blog and post to it very frequently. So that's it for the first 3 months. Within the first 6 months, Oracle ACE directors are expected to keep a conversation going with the product team and attend a local event. Not really a problem, just attend an event near you. Blog. And then one or more of either present at a non-Oracle event. For example, the community-driven free OpenSQL camp. And speaking of OpenSQL camp, Lenz Grimmer is actually organizing OpenSQL camp in St. Augustine, Germany, Saturday, August 21st to Sunday, August 22nd, as part of FrostCon. And Bradley Kuzmal of Tokutech and I are actually organizing OpenSQL camp in Boston on Saturday, October 16th and Sunday, October 17th. We haven't put anything up on opensqlcamp.org because we're waiting for final room reservations from MIT. They don't get that up until mid-May because they need their spring semester end first, and then we'll get that. But once we get that, we'll put more information up on opensqlcamp.org. So, and one or more of the following. So, presented at a non-Oracle event, publish an OTN article or note, which, by the way, will pay. I don't know how much it will pay, but hey, I'm going to have to write an article. Well, I'm going to do that anyway, so now I'm going to get paid for it? Even better. How is that? Is that a responsibility or benefit? It's kind of both to me. So the final choice is to participate in an Oracle-produced podcast, and I self-produce podcasts, about 25 of them for MySQL, so I know it's a lot of work. And if Oracle would produce the podcasts, you might just see a return of the MySQL-specific podcast, which I think would be neat. By the end of the minimum 12 months commitment to being an Oracle ACE director, the expectations are attend a meeting at Oracle Open World. Starting this year, there is actually a MySQL track at Oracle Open World, so I expect that anyone who's an Oracle ACE director will probably have a session there anyway and be speaking. Then there's more of the same. We've got more product meetings, more Oracle events, that blog again, and then the 3 items that made up the choose one by 6 months. You have to do all 3 by the end of the year. So let's recap. We have in green what MySQL has that Oracle doesn't, and we have in blue what Oracle has that MySQL doesn't. Now, I know some of you are thinking, Sheeri, what are you drinking? But I cannot ignore the fact that Oracle has more to offer the MySQL community than we've ever had before. They have more money. They have more resources. I'm not naive. I know why they have more resources. It's because of their licensing structure. But, I know that we're going to get more benefits coming to us than we've had before. After all, MySQL and Sun are our friends, but Oracle can be our friend with benefits. Thank you.